I never imagined that a simple camping trip could turn into such a terrifying experience. When my friends and I decided to camp in that forest, I was really excited. The thrill of venturing into the unknown always drew me in. Sure, we had heard the stories about the place being cursed, but we dismissed them as local exaggerations. After all, we were a group of young adventurers looking for fun, not afraid of a bit of urban legend. We set up our camp by the river, laughing and chatting cheerfully during the day. But when night fell, everything changed. A silence settled over the forest, interrupted only by strange sounds that made me shiver. I started feeling an inexplicable tension, like we were being watched. My friends also seemed uneasy, casting anxious glances at the shadows around us. Something was wrong, I could feel it. And as the night went on, the sense of danger only grew, a malignant presence becoming increasingly palpable. At that moment, I wished we had heeded the warnings and stayed away from that cursed forest. As the night progressed, a sense of unease began to spread among us. Shadows seemed to come alive, with strange lights flickering between the trees, as if something or someone was out there, watching us. Then the whispers, low and unsettling, started echoing around us. We couldn't pinpoint the exact source, but they seemed to come from all directions, as if the forest itself was calling to us. Fear began to settle in, and we soon bitterly regretted ignoring the warnings about that cursed place. What had once seemed like an exciting adventure was now turning into a never-ending nightmare. The forest seemed to come alive, surrounding us with a malevolent and oppressive presence. We nervously looked around, trying to locate the source of those disturbing whispers. My heart raced, and I could see the same panic reflected on my friends' faces. Something was terribly wrong with that place, and a sense of imminent danger consumed us. At that moment, all I wanted was to get out of there as quickly as possible, but something seemed to keep us trapped in that terrible cursed forest. Panic took over us as we realized those stories about the cursed forest were, indeed, real. We had no time to doubt. We hastily packed up our camp with trembling hands and started running, trying to escape that horrifying place. But the forest seemed to conspire against us. The strange lights blinded us, the whispers turned into deafening screams, and soon we were lost in the darkness. We ran desperately, trying to find our way back, but no matter which direction we went, we always ended up at the same point, as if the forest itself was keeping us there. Fear completely overtook us. Each of us began to imagine the worst, believing we were being hunted by supernatural forces. We looked around frantically, expecting to see something moving between the trees, watching us with malevolent intentions. The psychological tension reached its peak as we wandered, lost in that maze of shadows and whispers. We didn't know where to go or what to do. We were at the mercy of that cursed forest, which seemed to have awakened a sinister energy just to terrorize us. At that moment, all we wanted was to escape that nightmare and get back home, far from that curse. As we desperately ran through the forest, trying to escape that terrifying curse, one of my friends, Sarah, stumbled onto a thin rope that triggered a trap, pinning her to the ground. At that moment, the horrifying reality revealed itself before our eyes. Those terrifying lights and voices weren't supernatural in origin, but rather a sophisticated strategy by a group of criminals who used the legend of the cursed forest to lure and capture unsuspecting campers. The real danger wasn't the forest itself, but the people who exploited it for their own sordid purposes, robbing and possibly even harming those who ventured there. A wave of relief and, at the same time, anger washed over me. Everything we had feared, all the panic we had felt, was just a trap set by criminals. We weren't at the mercy of supernatural forces, but rather individuals with malicious intentions. With courage, my friend Mike managed to free Sarah from the trap. At that moment, we decided we wouldn't be intimidated any longer. We would confront those criminals and fight to escape that cursed forest, not for the supposed legends, but for our own safety. After a tense and twist-filled struggle against those criminals, we finally managed to escape the cursed forest, running desperately toward the main road. We were exhausted, injured, and traumatized by everything we had experienced in that hellhole. When we finally found help and reported what had happened, we could barely believe what we had faced. The curse of the forest wasn't supernatural at all, but rather the cruelty and greed of humans who had used local legends to lure and attack unsuspecting campers. Though we survived, the experience left deep scars on each of us. The fear and naivety had almost destroyed us, and now we carried that trauma with us. We vowed never to venture out in that way again, preferring to keep our distance from any place that seemed to hide hidden dangers.
That night will be forever etched in my memory. It was just me, my wife, and our 2 young kids in our isolated home when everything suddenly went dark. The power outage was accompanied by a deathly silence, broken only by the rapid beats of our hearts. We lit some candles, but the darkness seemed to deepen with every shadow dancing on the walls. The sound of a creaking door or a popping piece of wood was enough to make us hold our breath, stunned and fearful of what might be approaching. My kids huddled close to me, gripping my clothes tightly, their wide eyes reflecting the fear I felt. My wife was trying to stay calm, but her pale face and trembling hands betrayed her. In that oppressive environment, every little noise seemed amplified, leaving us at the mercy of the unknown. As time passed, the light taps on the windows and the front door grew more insistent, almost rhythmic, as if something or someone was determined to get in. My mind raced, recalling horror stories that had haunted me since childhood. The oppressive atmosphere only fed the sense of impending dread. My kids were softly sobbing, clinging to me in desperation. My wife remained by my side, her hands shaking, her face as pale as a ghost. Together, we were paralyzed, unable to move, trapped by the fear of the unknown lurking outside. The knocks grew louder and louder, sending our hearts into a panic. What could be out there, looking for a way in? Something supernatural, like the demons from the stories? Or something worse, something human and real? The tension built with each new knock, suffocating us with its terrifying presence. We didn't know what to do but wait for this horror to pass, praying for the darkness and silence to return. As the knocks persisted, my family's minds began to speculate about what might be outside, tormenting us. Sinister whispers, theories about ghosts or spirits trapped in another dimension, our minds were locked in an internal battle against the most terrible possibilities. The total darkness, interrupted only by the faint light of the candles, created an oppressive atmosphere of psychological terror. Each dancing shadow, each muffled sound seemed to carry a malevolent intent, watching and waiting for the right moment to strike. Clinging to each other in the cramped space of a room, we tried to protect ourselves from what we believed to be a supernatural threat. My kids cried softly, while my wife murmured desperate prayers. I, in turn, felt the cold grip of fear around my heart, imagining what might be about to break through the door or window. The uncertainty and helplessness in the face of the unknown consumed us, while the knocks continued like a funeral rhythm announcing our doom. In that suffocating darkness, we were prisoners of our own fears, at the mercy of something we couldn't see or understand. After hours of agony, the tension in my chest became unbearable. I couldn't stay hidden anymore, at the mercy of that invisible threat. Determined to protect my family, I grabbed a knife from the kitchen and a weak flashlight and cautiously approached one of the windows. When I illuminated what was outside, my heart froze. I quickly glimpsed the silhouette of a person, and then it all became clear. The knocks weren't from ghosts, but from burglars trying to break into our house. I realized that the power outage had been orchestrated by the criminals to sow chaos and fear while using the darkness as a cover to hide and strike without being seen. The relief of knowing it wasn't something supernatural was replaced by an even deeper terror. Now we were facing real adversaries, willing to do anything to get in and do who knows what to us. My family was cornered, completely vulnerable to that tangible threat. I gripped the knife tightly, feeling cold sweat trickling down my forehead. I had to act, had to find a way to protect my loved ones. I couldn't fail, not when everything depended on me. With my heart pounding, I decided to confront those criminals, no matter the cost. When we realized we were facing dangerous burglars, not ghosts or supernatural entities, panic took over us. Desperately, I tried to contact the police while my family took refuge in the safest room in the house. Time seemed to stand still as we heard objects being rummaged through and heavy footsteps echoing through the halls. Fear suffocated us, the sense of safety growing more distant. We prayed for help to arrive in time, before the criminals completed their intent. Finally, the police sirens cut through the air, but when the officers entered the house, the burglars had already fled, taking all our valuable belongings. The devastation was total. Our home, once a safe haven, was completely ransacked and violated. Traumatized, we then understood that the terror we felt had been deliberately manipulated by the criminals. They used fear as a powerful weapon, leaving us prisoners of our own imaginations while they looted our home.
That simple delivery at my door seemed so innocent at first. Just another package to open, maybe a gift or something I ordered and forgot about. But when I took out the photos and saw those shots of me sleeping in my own home, a chill ran down my spine. How was it possible? Who had access to my house and took these photos while I was completely unaware and vulnerable? The sense of invasion and violation of my privacy was overwhelming. I felt exposed, watched, threatened in a place that should have been my safe haven. As I examined each image, my mind went into panic mode, wondering who could have done this and what their intentions were. Was this intruder still around, watching my every move? My heart raced with the possibility that someone had unlimited access to my home and me. There was no way I could feel safe again. The feeling of being watched wouldn't leave me. Every moment, I found myself looking over my shoulder, scanning for suspicious movements or any sign that I wasn't alone. Small details that I'd have overlooked before, a slightly open door, a strange noise at night, now had me on edge and suspicious. Was I becoming paranoid? Maybe my mind was just playing tricks on me because of the shock of the photos. But something inside me knew it was more than that. There was something or someone lurking, watching me, making me feel powerless and vulnerable in my own home. At any moment, I felt like I could discover more evidence of this privacy invasion. Would there be more photos? Or maybe the intruder himself watching me from some dark corner? This uncertainty drove me crazy, making me question my own reality. Was I losing my mind? Or was this nightmare just beginning? I couldn't trust anything anymore, not even myself. And the feeling of being hunted, with no place to run, terrified me more and more. I tried everything to solve this mystery. I reviewed the security camera footage from my building, interviewed my neighbors in hopes of a clue, even hired a private detective to help track down the origin of the package with the photos. But no matter how hard I tried, every lead seemed to end in a dead end. The more I investigated, the more helpless I felt. This stalker was always one step ahead, leaving me increasingly desperate and frustrated. And worse, it seemed like he enjoyed toying with my fear, leaving little signs of his presence as if to provoke me. Sometimes I'd find things out of place, as if someone had been tampering with them. Other times, I'd hear strange noises at night, keeping me awake, trembling in terror, wondering what might be lurking. I felt cornered in my own home, with the constant sensation of being watched. Nothing I did seemed to stop this intruder who seemed to take pleasure in terrorizing me. I felt powerless, crazed, not knowing who or what to trust anymore. The worst part was that I felt this macabre game was only just beginning. As time went on, I realized my stalker was becoming bolder. New photos kept appearing, showing me sleeping from different angles, or even capturing intimate details of my routine that could only have been taken with someone inside my home. That chilled me to the bone. It wasn't just about surveillance, but an invasion of my most private space. Someone was entering my home when I wasn't there, watching and photographing me without my knowledge. The psychological terror intensified with every new piece of evidence of this violation. The feeling of being increasingly manipulated by this intruder was overwhelming. He seemed to know exactly where I was, what I was doing, anticipating my movements with frightening accuracy. It was as if he could see and touch me at any moment, even when I was alone. Slowly, this cat-and-mouse game was driving me insane. I couldn't trust anything or anyone. Every noise, every shadow, every misplaced detail sent me into a panic, imagining that at any moment, this stalker could appear right in front of me. I felt both closer to and further from him at the same time. And that was, without a doubt, the worst part. I couldn't stand the feeling of helplessness and being at the mercy of this stalker anymore. I decided it was time to take action, to put an end to this nightmare once and for all. I devised a careful plan to lure him out, to finally unmask who was behind all this psychological torture. With my heart racing, I waited patiently for the perfect opportunity. And when it came, I confronted my tormentor face to face, determined to uncover his identity and end this disturbing game. But nothing could have prepared me for the shock that followed. To my horror, the person behind it all was someone I had trusted for years, my coworker, with whom I had a friendly and professional relationship. How could he do this to me? How could someone I trusted so much betray me like this, violating and terrorizing me in my own home? I felt betrayed, deceived, as if the ground beneath me had crumbled. Everything I believed about this person and about myself seemed like a lie. How could I have been so blind? How did I let someone get so close, so intimately, that they could violate every aspect of my life? In that moment, facing this wolf in sheep's clothing, all I felt was paralyzing fear and complete helplessness. I had no place to run, no one to turn to. That revelation left me utterly devastated. Everything I believed, all my notions of safety and trust, crumbled before me. I realized I had been manipulated all along, that the danger was much closer than I could have ever imagined. My coworker, someone I interacted with daily, whom I trusted, was behind this entire nightmare. He was watching me, photographing me, invading my home, playing with me, terrorizing me as if it were a twisted game for his own sick pleasure.